Tripoli? Tripoli, Benghazi is under attack. The Ambo is in a safe haven.
We are overrun. We need immediate assistance. We need some fucking help.
September 11th, 2012. In the coastal city of Benghazi, Libya, flames tear through the U.S. diplomatic mission. Gunfire echoes against crumbling walls. Inside, a desperate voice crackles over a secure channel. We're under attack. If you don't send help soon, we're all going to die. The world was told this was a sudden act of terror. But behind the smoke and fire lay something else, something darker. Because Benghazi wasn't just a diplomatic post. It was a front line in a secret war. One so covert that even many in Washington had no idea it was being fought. And the night of the attack may have been the moment it all came crashing down. Why didn't help ever come? For 13 desperate hours in Benghazi, calls for air support and reinforcements went unanswered. Washington hesitated. Fighters and rescue teams were close enough to intervene, but orders never came. The men on the ground were left to fight and die alone. What was America really doing in Benghazi? The world was told it was just a diplomatic mission, but only a mile away, a CIA Annex ran covert operations, tracking jihadist networks, recruiting informants, and, according to reports, funneling Gaddafi's stockpiled weapons into Syria's civil war. Benghazi wasn't just diplomacy. It was the front line of a shadow war. And who paid the price? And why does it still matter? Ambassador Chris Stevens, Sean Smith, Tyrone Woods, and Glenn Doherty gave their lives that night. But their deaths became more than tragedy. They became symbols of bravery, betrayal, and political warfare. In Washington, Benghazi sparked hearings, conspiracy, and mistrust that still shapes America's politics today. But here's the part the public never saw. Inside the CIA Annex that night, as gunfire cracked in the distance, agents began destroying hard drives, burning papers, erasing any trace of what America had really been doing in Benghazi. These weren't just documents. They were the threads of a global network, weapons shipments, names of informants, covert channels stretching from North Africa into the war in Syria. For the operatives in that villa, survival was only half the battle. The other half was making sure no one uncovered the truth. And that truth raises the question Washington never wanted asked. Was Benghazi attacked because of what the U.S. was hiding there?
We came, we saw, he died.
It is great to be here in free Benghazi and in free Libya.
The new government is consolidating the control over the country.
Libya, 2012. 1 year after the fall of Muammar Gaddafi, the country was fractured beyond repair. Rival militias controlled entire neighborhoods. Al-Qaeda-linked groups roamed freely, and weapons looted from Gaddafi's arsenals flooded the black market. Officially, the U.S. maintained a diplomatic mission in Benghazi to support Libya's fragile transition. But just a mile away, inside an unmarked villa, sat the CIA Annex, the hidden nerve center of America's presence. According to multiple reports, Benghazi was more than a diplomatic outpost. It was a hub for tracking and possibly facilitating weapon shipments from Libya into Syria's raging civil war. U.S. operatives worked with local informants, militia leaders, and black market arms dealers to push Gaddafi's stockpiles across borders. It was a dangerous game, one built on fragile alliances and even more fragile secrets. And as summer turned to fall, warnings piled up. Local militias were growing hostile. Car bombings rocked Benghazi. British diplomats pulled out after attacks on their convoy, Even Red Cross staff abandoned the city. Yet the US presence remained. The question was no longer if Benghazi would explode, but when.
I'm Chris Stevens. I got in from Benghazi a couple of days ago. I'm in town for consultations in the department. Just briefly, I'll say a few words at the top. I've been in Benghazi for about 4 months now. We got there April 5th.
Ambassador Chris Stevens arrived in Benghazi in September 2012 with a mission to strengthen ties with local leaders and shore up America's influence. But Stevens himself noted the rising tide of danger. He wrote cables warning Washington that extremist groups were gaining ground, that security was thin, and that his own compound was vulnerable. Security requests for additional forces went unanswered. Instead, the mission relied on a small contingent of State Department agents and local Libyan guards, many poorly trained, poorly equipped, and poorly motivated. Meanwhile, across town, the CIA's Annex was running a separate but interconnected operation. Its officers worked under the radar, cultivating informants, tracking jihadists, and, if reports are correct, helping funnel weapons to rebels in Syria. The Annex depended on secrecy. Any exposure could unravel not only the mission, but US credibility in the region. By early September, Benghazi was a powder keg, and all it needed was a spark. That spark came on the night of September 11, 2012. Just after 9:40 p.m., militants, armed with rifles, grenades, and rocket-propelled grenades, stormed the diplomatic compound. They set fire to the main building, choking it with smoke. Inside, Ambassador Stevens and Information Officer Sean Smith struggled to breathe as flames closed in. CIA security contractors, former Navy SEALs, and Marines stationed at the Annex heard the call for help. They pleaded for permission to launch an immediate rescue. But higher command hesitated, worried about exposing their covert operations. Every minute lost was deadly. Finally, the contractors disobeyed orders. They raced to the compound, guns blazing, dragging survivors through the chaos. But by the time they reached Stevens, it was too late. He was overcome by smoke and carried lifeless from the burning building. The night was far from over. The attackers had only just begun. The Benghazi attack showed how fast life can change in a single night. And while we can't change the past, we can change what comes next. That's why I want to tell you about something new I found. It's called the AI Side Hustle ebook, and the cool part is you can grab it right now and pay as much as you like. Inside are 100 step-by-step ways to earn online with AI. Blogging, logos, t-shirts, YouTube channels, even passive income streams that run on autopilot. It also comes with bonus guides to help you launch and grow, plus resale rights, so you can flip it as your own product and keep 100% of the profit. No coding, no stress, just clear steps anyone can follow. Honestly, it feels less like a book and more like a cheat code for 2025. So check it out. Grab the AI Side Hustle ebook today, and remember, you can pay as much as you like. Click below, and now let's get back to the story. The battle shifted to the CIA Annex. Around midnight, waves of militants surrounded the compound, unleashing gunfire and rocket fire. For hours, the defenders, just a handful of Americans, held the line against overwhelming numbers. At 5:15 a.m., the attackers launched their deadliest strike, a coordinated mortar barrage. Within seconds, rounds tore into the Annex. Tyrone Woods and Glenn Doherty, both former Navy SEALs, were killed instantly. Others were wounded. Repeated radio calls for air support or reinforcements went unanswered. Fighter jets were stationed just hours away in Italy. Special forces teams stood ready in Europe. But no one was ever sent.
There in northern Libya, right there on the coast, that we couldn't get U.S. military there for 24 hours. That's embarrassing if it's true.
In those hours, the defenders were alone, relying only on their courage, training, and the few brave Libyans who risked their lives to help. By dawn, the battle was over. 4 Americans were dead: Ambassador Chris Stevens, Sean Smith, Tyrone Woods, and Glenn Doherty. The mission lay in ruins. But the questions were only beginning. The morning after, Washington scrambled to control the narrative. The official story released to the public? The attack had begun as a protest over an anti-Islam video circulating online. A riot, they said, that spun out of control. But intelligence cables and eyewitnesses told a different story. This was no spontaneous protest. It was a premeditated assault, likely coordinated by extremist militias. And buried within the confusion was something even more explosive: the existence of the CIA's Shadow Network in Benghazi. Why had requests for extra security been denied? Why were the dangers downplayed? And why was the story of a video protest pushed so hard in the days that followed? At the center of it all was Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Summoned before Congress, grilled on live television, she defended her department's actions while critics accused her of a cover-up. Her most famous line,
"What difference at this point does it make?"
became both a rallying cry for her detractors and a shield for her defenders. But behind the sound bites lay a deeper question. Was the attack in Benghazi simply a failure of security, or was it the bloody consequence of America's shadow war? Benghazi became more than a tragedy. It became a battlefield in America's own political war. Congress launched multiple investigations, committees demanded testimony, subpoenaed emails, and dissected cables line by line. Each side accused the other of playing politics with the dead. For conservatives, Benghazi symbolized failed leadership, negligence, and dishonesty at the highest levels. For liberals, it was a political witch hunt designed to derail Hillary Clinton's career. And yet, the deeper truths remained obscured. Few Americans learned about the CIA Annex, about the weapons pipelines, or about the Shadow Network that may have made Benghazi a target in the first place. The firefight in Libya had transformed into a propaganda war in Washington.
On the Benghazi and
probes about Benghazi.
The Benghazi committee. You wouldn't have had your Benghazi situation.
4 years later, Benghazi returned, not on the battlefield, but at the ballot box. During the 2016 election, Benghazi was weaponized. Donald Trump and Republican opponents hammered Clinton on her role, using images of burning compounds and fallen Americans in campaign ads. For many voters, Benghazi became shorthand for distrust in government, a symbol that leaders would lie, obfuscate, and abandon their own when the truth became inconvenient. For Clinton supporters, it was proof of a relentless smear campaign. For her critics, it was proof of corruption and failure. Lost in the noise was the reality. 4 men had died serving their country, trapped between the visible world of diplomacy and the invisible world of covert war.
A lot of people say they're not going to vote this November because their candidate didn't win. Well, I know some other people who won't be voting this year either. Hillary as president? No thanks. I served in Benghazi. my friends didn't make it. They did their part. Do yours.
Four Americans died that night in Benghazi. Their courage is unquestionable. But in the shadows of that tragedy lies a story still locked behind classified files. A story that stretches from a Libyan alleyway to the halls of Washington, and perhaps to the Oval Office itself. Because Benghazi wasn't just about one night of terror. It was about the collision of secrecy and democracy, of covert wars fought in the dark and political battles waged in the light. And its legacy endures, in the distrust many Americans still feel toward their government, in the blurred lines between war and politics, and in the question that still lingers today. What was the United States really doing in Benghazi? Benghazi was not the first time America's shadow wars spilled into the open, and it would not be the last. The question of how far governments will go to fight their battles in the dark, and how much truth the public is ever allowed to see, is a question that echoes across decades. Benghazi was not the first time tragedy raised more questions than answers, and it would not be the last. The line between truth, secrecy, and what the public is told is as blurred today as it was that night in Libya. Next week, we cross from geopolitics into royalty and into a Paris tunnel in 1997. A princess adored by millions, a car crash that shocked the world, and a wave of suspicion that has never truly faded. Was it simply a tragic accident or something more? The death of Princess Diana. This is the Shadow Chronicle Archive, where history's deepest mysteries are dragged into the light. Please like and subscribe for more stories like these.